Well, today we thought we'd take a look at several of the different hollies that grow well here in Oklahoma. In addition to being one of the classic Christmas decorating items, hollies also are a wonderful addition to the landscape because they provide some very good year-round interest. Now, hollies are in that class of plants known as broadleaf evergreens, which is basically what the word means. They have broad leaves, so they don't have needles, but they are evergreen. And this means that they take some special care requirements. Now, for the most part, hollies like to have a slightly acidic soil. Also, if you can plant them in the location where they have pretty good drainage, they'll probably do better for you. The other thing that you need to think about is most hollies like just a little bit of shade. Now, we're going to look at some hollies that can stand out in the open place, but for the most part, they grow in full sun to slightly shady. And here in Oklahoma, if you can provide them with just a little bit of shelter, it can help them get along a lot better. Now, the holly that we're standing next to here, which is actually very, very tall, is a Foster's holly. And that's something else to think about when you're putting hollies in your landscape, is to check and see just how large these are going to get, because when you buy a holly in a little container, you think of it as a shrub, but some of them can actually be a tree. Now, this Foster's holly can grow 20 to 25 feet tall, and you can see here that it has a nice set of berries. Now, this is one of the classic hollies with the red berries, and it actually gets very good berry set. These will persist throughout the winter. Where some of the hollies have the red berries early in the winter, they don't hang on the tree very long, but these last quite a while. A Foster's holly also has a shiny green leaf, anywhere from a lighter green to, you can see up here, it's more of a darker green we have on our leaf, and it's a fairly narrow leaf. Now, contrast this to a holly that we have growing right next to it. This is an American holly right here, and you can see we also get very good berry set, but we have a wider green leaf. So this tends to look just a little bit thicker than our Foster's holly with the narrower leaf. Now, the other neat thing about hollies, if you look at the wood down here, most of the hollies have a very pretty bark. It's usually kind of a grayish look to it, and if you have a chance to limb some of these up and expose the bark, it can be very, very pretty. The other thing about hollies that is very nice is that they will lend themselves to being pruned back fairly heavily. So if you make a mistake and plant a large holly in a spot that maybe you need a smaller holly, you can go in and drastically cut the holly back, because there are a lot of latent buds down here that will go ahead and break and leaf out. Now, the time of year to do that, if you really need to do some major trimming on your holly, is in the spring, right before the growth spurt. So probably around March, after we get through our hard winter, if you want to go in and do some major pruning on your hollies, that's the time to do it. And the reason that you want to do it then, even though these don't lose their leaves and get them back, if you do your pruning then, it will look bare a lot less time than if you've pruned it back early in the winter and it's sat there bare all season. Now, if you're looking for a smaller holly, now while this holly won't stay quite this small, it will only reach about 12 feet tall and probably about 9 feet wide. And as you look at this holly, you notice that it has kind of a bluish cast to it. This is one of the blue hollies, or Survey hollies, and this one is called Blue Princess. Now, this brings up another item about hollies. Blue Princess, there's also Blue Prince. And most hollies need both a female and a male holly in order to get berries. And you will only get berries on the female holly, and usually for most hollies you will only get berries on the female holly if a male holly is close by. And for some hollies, while they may not require a male pollinator, they will probably set berries a lot better with a male pollinator. Now, Blue Princess is one that needs a male pollinator close by. So when you're shopping for hollies, make sure that you've got one of each, and that if you want a lot of berries, you get mostly females and get a couple of male hollies to put in there. Now, Blue Princess, again, is one of the blue hollies, and not only is the foliage kind of a bluish cast, but it also has a leathery look to it. Now, while the Foster's holly and the American holly that we saw earlier, the Foster's is hardy from zone 6 to 9, while the American holly is hardy from zone 5 to 9, the blue holly, or Blue Princess holly, is actually hardy much colder. In fact, it doesn't do quite so well in zones 7, 8, and 9. It does better in the colder areas. So this might be a good holly for the colder areas of the state. The only thing about this holly is that it really does not like to be out in an area where it gets a lot of wind damage throughout the winter. So you want to have it in a sheltered spot, maybe even in kind of a shady place, but it's probably going to be more winter hardy than some of the other hollies. Now, if you're looking for a really tough holly, this is one that you should really think about. This is a Nellie R. Stevens holly, and you can see by looking at it, we have this beautiful classic dark green holly foliage, and underneath it's a bit more of a light green color. We also have green new growth, while as you go back on the stem, it gets kind of a tan coloration to the bark. Now, the Nellie R. Stevens is a pretty fast-growing holly, and again, it is very tough. It'll grow anywhere from 12 to 15 feet tall. It can stand our hot summers. It's also, once established, a pretty drought-tolerant holly, and it does set some very beautiful red berries on it. Now, the Nellie R. Stevens will set berries parthenocarpically. That's hard to say. That just basically means it doesn't have to have a male pollinator. However, it will set a lot better berries if you have male pollinators. And this is one of the hollies where the berries won't persist all winter long, but you do have a nice display at the beginning of the winter. The other thing that's nice about this, it is hardy from zone 6 to 9, and these hollies that you're looking at right here froze back completely to the ground 4 years ago. We had a very, very harsh winter. We had well below, in fact, we had 22 below zero out here. These froze back to the ground. However, they did not die, and you can see how fast it's grown since then. These make a nice screen, and that's basically what we're using them for here. And it's a wonderful holly to use in your landscape. Now, the hollies that we've looked at so far have been the spiny types, but we've got one for you if you don't like the spiny leaves. Well, our final holly is the Yaupon holly, and as you look at the leaf, you can see this is one of the hollies that doesn't have spines on the leaves. In fact, these nice small leaves actually have kind of a scalloped edge to them. And it is a small leaf holly, and the new growth on this is almost kind of purple. You can see here on the edge, and then it turns this beautiful gray fairly soon. And the bark on a Yaupon holly is gorgeous, and usually you'll see these in kind of a multi-trunked tree form. They can grow anywhere from 15 to 20 feet tall. This particular cultivar is called Pride of Houston, and it's probably about 15 feet would be the extent of its growth. Now, Yaupon hollies come in several different forms. One of them is very compact. It's called Nana, and this is basically your dwarf Yaupon holly. It can grow anywhere from about 3 to 5 feet tall, and it can actually get quite wide. They can become about 8 feet wide, and often these are used as small shrub borders because they do a lot better than, say, a boxwood in our area. Pendulous form or weeping form of holly is called pendula, and there's actually one that has a very upright growth habit and only gets about 2 feet wide, and this is called Will Fleming. So Yaupon hollies, you can pretty much find one to fit whatever type of landscaping that you're going to do. Now, they're hardy in Oklahoma from zone 6B on down south. So if you're in the panhandle of the state, you may not have a Yaupon that is winter hardy in your area unless it's in a sheltered position. But for those of us who live in the mid to the south part of the state, a Yaupon holly is a wonderful landscaping tool. They are really pretty easy to grow. They can take full sun to shade. They also do pretty well in both well-drained and dry sites. The only problem with Yaupon hollies is some of them tend to sucker quite a bit down around the base. Now, this one isn't doing that yet. However, some of them do, so you'll have to check and just keep that cleaned up around the base of the plant. Now, these are just a few of the hollies that are available to plant in our Oklahoma landscapes. And one last thing, while most of our trees and shrubs, we recommend that you plant them in the fall first and then in the spring, because fall is a good planting time. For broadleaf evergreens, the best time to plant them is in the spring. So you can do your shopping now and do your planting this next spring.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.